Shannon looked at me in utter dismay. I have all these art supplies and I have no idea what to do with any of them. Not only that, but when I go into an art supply store, I have a complete meltdown. How can I be such a confident expert in my business and yet feel totally at a loss when it comes to doing something creative? Does this sound familiar? Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan, and this is the Ignite Your Creative Fire video series. And if you're here because you feel super confident in some areas of your life, but you're really struggling in others, especially in the area of creativity, you're in the right place. And over the next 5 videos, I'm going to share stories of other people reconnecting to their creativity, or share more about my own personal story of connecting to creativity. And I'm going to share the 5-step process that I have used over and over again to help myself and other creatives to really connect to that innate spark inside of us, to get that flame glowing, growing brightly, and to make sure that we're committing to doing the creative work that we say that we want to do. So as a successful professional woman who feels pretty confident in most areas of your life, but you might be thinking, well, I'm really not creative. It's probably because you've heard throughout the years a lot of things like, you can't draw, you can't write, you can't dance, you can't sing. In fact, one time I was at a Christmas Eve party as probably a 12 or 13-year-old singing Christmas carols in a room full of people when someone decided that they were the star of the show and were singing and told me to sit down and be quiet. And it was a very painful moment, and I've never ever sung in public since then, and I'm 54, so that was a long time ago. And stories like this are so common. They get us caught up in a place of believing that we're not creative. But all the current research shows that as humans, we are wired to create. We're innately creative, and yet we have conflated creativity with artistic expression. And so in this 5-part video series, I'm going to show you that yes, you truly are creative, that you are wired to create, that you're already expressing your creative brilliance. Maybe you just haven't defined it in quite that way, and that you're probably here because you are looking for some form of creative play or creative expression that brings you back to a sense of yourself. And that might be through some form of art, but it could be dance or movement, could be gardening, could be a new career or a travel adventure around the world. And there's no right or wrong way to really express your innate creativity, but it all starts with the very beginning of the process, which is step number 1 is clarity. And clarity is so important. As a successful professional woman, you probably already have a lot of clarity around your goals. In fact, you wouldn't be at the point that you're at in your career if you didn't have a lot of clarity around who you are and what you're confident in, what your area of expertise is in. And when we have that level of confidence and clarity in our career, it can be really challenging to have beginner's mind and to try to do something that we're not so good at, or that we think would be fun, but we're afraid of getting judged or criticized or getting laughed at. And hearing those you can'ts come back to haunt us. You can't draw, you can't write, you can't sing. So recent research into the field of creativity has really proven that creativity is a skill that any one of us can learn and can improve and grow in. And I love this definition of creativity, so pardon me while I'm looking at my notes here so that I make sure I get it right. And this is from Tom Kelly and David Kelly in their brilliant book, Creative Confidence. And they say that creativity is using your imagination to create something new in the world. It's that simple. It's using your imagination to create something new in the world. And that creativity comes into play whenever you have the opportunity to generate new ideas, solutions, or approaches. So I would ask you to really think about how creativity and innovation are already showing up in your life and in your career. How many times a day are you required to put out fires to solve problems? And it may feel sometimes overwhelming, but sometimes when we really connect with why we're so good at putting out fires, why we get asked to do it all the time, we can get to the core of our unique brilliance. But let's dig back just a little bit further to get some clarity around how we used to love to play. Because I think that as busy, professional, successful, high-achieving leaders in our careers and our companies, we've forgotten how to play. And that longing that you're feeling to reconnect to your creativity is a longing to connect to the childlike sense of wonder and imagination and play you had as a child. Like for me, there was something magical about getting a box of crayons that's box of 64, and you open the box. It was the one that had the sharpener in the back. You could smell that waxy smell, and in that box of crayons was a world of possibility. Or going out into the woods behind the house where I grew up in South Texas and playing with my brother and building forts and being adventurers and explorers, or riding my horse Blackie around my neighborhood. I had so much freedom as a child to explore and go on adventures. And of course, the neighborhood doesn't look quite so big anymore, but there was a lot to explore as a child of 5, 6, 7, and 8, flying around on the back of that big horse with pigtails flying. So I'm curious, what was it when you were a child that brought you the most joy and the most play? Building forts on a rainy day, dancing in your bedroom to records, I was going to say to old 45s, or for those of you that might be younger and listening to MP3 players, and you've got the tunes in your headphones and you're dancing all by yourself in your bedroom just for the pure joy of movement. Or maybe you were passionate about photography and you asked your parents for a camera and you went through a stage of going around everywhere looking for photographs. We all had these childlike imaginations that made us super curious about the world around us and made us want to explore and investigate. Maybe you had an imaginary friend, or you wrote stories, or you loved to sew. So I invite you to just pause for a moment and think about if there was something that you could bring back into your life in terms of creative play that you set aside because of those stories of you can't, or those stories of it's a waste of time. In Shannon's case, we realized that she looked at all of the creative ideas that we were coming up with as more projects. And she kept saying over and over again, I don't want to be all business all the time. I'm tired of thinking about all business all the time. What I need is something to help me relax, to help me to connect to myself, and to bring me joy and get me outside of thinking about my business. And the truth is, the more that we create opportunities for creative play outside of our day-to-day work, the more it infuses joy back into the work, the more we reconnect to the passion of why we decided to pursue a particular career in the first place. So creative play is an important part of really staying connected to the joy of who we are being in the moment. And when we're in that joy of being, it's amazing how creative insight can happen, new inspiration can come up, but it all starts simply with that first step of clarity. What brings you joy? What would you like to be doing more of that you haven't been giving yourself permission to do, or that you've been looking at it as this isn't important, or it's selfish, or I couldn't take time to do that, or I don't know how to get started. Maybe you admire all the people who are knitting these days and you would love to be knitting beautiful sweaters and scarves and baby blankets, but the thought is daunting. So clarity, what would bring you joy and creative play? That's the very first step in the process. And we've given you a couple of choices just below the video. I'd love some feedback on what would you like to spend more time doing. Feel free to type in your own response as well. And if at any time during this video series you'd like to talk with me directly and skip the video series and get more creative clarity, then feel free to click the button Talk to Minette, and it'll take you directly to the chance to schedule time on my calendar. I'm happy to connect with you one-on-one. And if you're ready to keep binge watching on this fun video series, then I invite you to go to video 2, where you're going to meet Yolanda. You're going to learn step 2 in the process, and you're going to discover that you are innately creative, and you're probably going to be able to put a name to your creative brilliance in a way that you can't today. So I'll see you in video 2, and I hope that you spend a little bit of time thinking about clarity in that box of crayons today. I'll see you soon.